on my most bridal of knits, I think, to talk through my plans for making my own wedding dress. Hello, if you've never met me before, my name is Nadia. I live in Ireland. I am someone who makes things and posts it on the internet for some reason. Primarily, I talk about knitting on here, but recently I've committed to sharing more of my sewing on this channel because it's a hobby that I really love but don't get as much time to do anymore, and I really want to sort of spark that joy back up. And I have a very special occasion to sew for. I am getting married in September, which is just right around the corner. It's going to be March in about 5 minutes, which is terrifying. And I decided, devastatingly, to sew my own wedding dress. This was not the plan. I was hoping to buy a dress, just any dress. Truthfully, I was actually looking at this as an opportunity to buy like a designer dress. I really kind of foresaw it as the only time in my life that I'd be able to just go out and justify spending thousands of euros on a designer that I really liked and admired. Things have just conspired to mean that I have decided to sew my own. I think it's a combination of things. Literally, there's a text exchange with my fiance where I told him that I was having very dark thoughts, and he was very worried until I told him that those dark thoughts were in fact just that I would sew my own wedding dress, which makes it sound really scary, and it is kind of scary. I think it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of stress, and yeah, that's definitely one of the reasons why I didn't want to do it. In my last video I covered some of the reasons why I was hesitant to sew my own wedding dress, but I like my hobbies to be pretty low pressure, and it not matter if things are super perfect, and this is kind of like the one thing that you kind of want to do a good job on. So I also didn't necessarily want to put all of that stress on myself, but I'm just a sucker for pain and worry. So yeah, here we are. I intend this to be the first video in a series of videos that will show you the process of making my wedding dress, but this first one really is just like an introductory into the design and the plan. I have started, I'm in the patterning stage and the toiling stage right now, but I need to show you what the plan is before I show you all of the things that I'm doing with it, and I also need to show you some of the materials that I've collected in order to achieve the things that I want to achieve, because that's fun, right? Like, it's like new things coming in. So yes, so we will go over the design and how I want to sort of go about it, and then yes, some of the materials that I've collected so far, and really just sort of the plan of tackling all of the different steps. There's many. I've really bitten off more than I can chew here, but hopefully it'll be a bit of fun, a nice big learning experience, and I'll come out of it the other side only a tiny bit scarred. I think I kind of always knew from the beginning that I wanted something non-traditional. I actually really intended not to have a white dress at all. There's this really old inspo picture, I think she's called What Olivia Did, or that's her sort of old Instagram handle, and now she's just, it's her name on Instagram. But a long while ago, she got married in a light pink dress, and it's stuck with me ever since. I was really quite enchanted with the idea of not wearing the traditional white. I think the really interesting thing about getting married is that when you've always seen it as like an abstract concept, and then you're now suddenly faced with all of these like traditions and these expectations and you know, all of these things that you've seen other people do, and you start to question like, why would I do that, and kind of like pit it up against your own values. Like, I think, I don't know, for a bride, I feel like it's a very traditional thing, and as a modern bride it can be quite difficult to, you know, like, basically I'm just a massive feminist, and wearing like a pure white dress and like a garter and like doing all of the you know, the flower toss and all of these traditions that feel sometimes rooted in a lot of like non-feminism, it feels quite strange. And so I think what's great is that I think a lot of women nowadays, they sort of pick and choose the traditions that they actually care about. I definitely just had the feeling that I didn't want to go for some big white meringue of a dress, because I've never really had a big desire to be a princess. And I want to feel like myself on the day. I think is very important. So yeah, so I didn't necessarily want something white. I was really intending to sort of go to one of my favorite designers and just pick a dress. I mentioned in my previous video, I went to Copenhagen in November to try on some dresses in Cecilie Bahnsen. And although they were really, really beautiful, I think there was something that wasn't clicking. And there was nothing really that I was like, wow, this has to be the one. And I think sometimes actually when you're faced with the reality of the price point, it can be quite jarring, where you're like, okay, really, I'm gonna drop 2,000, 3,000, you know, like a big chunk of change on something that I'm not 100% sure about. And I think I kept finding myself being like, oh, if I could just tweak this, or if I could just change that, or change the color, or change this, then this would be the perfect dress. And you don't want to do that when you're spending that kind of money. I also was very enchanted with the idea of buying a Molly Goddard dress, specifically kind of the big frou-frou pink dress from Killing Eve, that kind of like overly tulle style. It's just something that I keep coming back to. So I was quite enchanted by that idea. The thing is that when I was looking, Molly Goddard was only doing bridal, so literally her website was completely bare, with no ready to wear on it at all. And then she was doing these custom bridal appointments, or like custom bridal dresses, which is great, but they were prohibitively, like, they were just incredibly expensive. And I did really, really like the idea of them, but I think that actually in reality, a lot of the techniques, that the ones in the price range that I felt like I could afford, were using techniques that I felt like I could achieve pretty easily, and that didn't feel particularly special or couture, or something that I could, never make myself. And actually my original idea from the beginning was actually to go for a Simone Rocha dress. Simone Rocha's funny, right? So she's an Irish Nepo baby designer, daughter of John Rocha, who I believe is Chinese Irish. And he is quite a big name designer in Ireland and then abroad as well. But she's gone on to do more sort of big couture pieces rather than the more like higher end, like normal ready to wear, I want to say. I knew of her before, but I think, that H&M, Simone Rocha for H&M collection came out, and it was during the pandemic, and I absolutely just lost my mind over it, and have since collected a lot of the pieces. And there's a lot of themes in her work that I really resonate with, like all of this like big frou-frou white lace with all of these red accents, the light pink, the real girliness juxtaposed with this real like harshness and sort of like punk edges. And I love her shapes. She uses different body types on her runways. I feel like a lot of her pieces have also this kind of like religious Catholic connotations to them, which is probably, I think I read an interview ages back, and I think she was saying that when she went to NCAD, she would walk past a communion, is that what they're called? Yeah, like a communion dress shop, with all of the like white frou-frou dresses and the lace and stuff, and that was sort of a big inspiration for her. And yeah, just having that like Irish link with the Catholicism and everything, I think it's very fitting. It's something that I really, really enjoy seeing. So yeah, actually going all the way back to last year, in April, when I was in the States for work, I stopped by one of her shops. She has two shops, one in London and one in New York. Because she's a traitor and she doesn't have one in Dublin. She has one shop in New York, and I stopped by whilst we were in Soho. I went to see if there was anything I wanted to try on, and there was just nothing in the shop at the time that was grabbing me. And what I've noticed since then is that I've done like a really big deep dive into all of her past collections, and I think the era of Simone Rocha that I'm in love with is like 2018, Simone Rocha. And I think since then, don't get me wrong, the collections are gorgeous, but they've changed in style and they've become a bit more mature, a bit more refined, and maybe a bit less like big frou-frou dress with embroidery and like lots of detail and lots of ornateness. And so around January of this year, it became really clear to me that the things that were available on the market were either too expensive for what they were, or they just weren't fulfilling the vision that I had in my head. So I went through a bunch of different avenues. You know, I was looking at, I found another Irish designer that does these like crazy dresses that have like all over embroidery. I really love that idea of like this like big white pure element that's kind of ruined by some like blood red. I feel that just feels very punk to me. Like there's something about that. I also looked at Vivienne Westwood. I think her bridal is really gorgeous. It's shockingly expensive. It's like I think the cheapest you can go for is about, the higher end can go up to anywhere from like 10 grand to 20 grand on a dress. And I just think that's ridiculous, because that's about the amount that we want to spend on the wedding. So it's just, no, it's insane. So I went to, when I was in Madrid, to visit my friend just for fun, we went to one of those like warehouse wedding dress shops where they, you know, they do the big American thing, and they ask you what you want and what the vibe is of your wedding, and then they go off and then they find a dress and then they put you in it, and they don't give you all the options because otherwise it's too overwhelming, etc., etc. And then you try it on, and then like, you know, they make you close your eyes and they're like blah, and they say that, you know, they're gonna find your dress for you. So I'll show you a couple of things that I tried on, and mostly this was kind of like a proof of concept of, do I think that the shape I want to go for is flattering on me, and do I feel good in it? And also it was kind of just to get a sneak peek into like the average quality of a wedding dress and the cost and that kind of thing. So we went to Sedka Novia in Madrid, and they were very lovely. They were very pushy. Oh my god, they were so pushy, like salesy. Thankfully, like my Spanish is not great, and my friend was sort of acting as like a relay, and so she was fielding me from a lot of like the sales speak, but like there was a lot of like, oh, it's perfect, oh, it's beautiful, oh, the quality, and then just like really sort of laying on thick. Actually, the thing that was amazing was that they were like, okay, your wedding is in 6 months, 7 months or whatever, you need to order it now or we won't have time to make the dress. And I think like that was something that I just didn't appreciate, where I'm like, I'm sure that obviously timelines are long, but I'm sure that if I rocked up 3 months before, then they'd still probably find me a dress to wear. And it did kind of feel like another tactic to sort of get me to sort of put down a deposit and buy the dress. So yes, anyway, I tried on some dresses. They confirmed my suspicions. I did kind of like use it as a road test to feel for like, oh, this one has a corset, this has this has that, and sort of pick up on some details that I quite liked. But yeah, ultimately I didn't fall in love with any of them. The closest one was this one. And to be honest, if I wasn't making my own, I would be quite tempted to buy this dress. But yeah, I don't know, ultimately it's just another white dress, and that just didn't really feel like me. The design. I sketched it up. I have it somewhere, but I think I'll just put an image up on the screen and that'll be easiest. The inspiration being 2018 Simone Rocha, and a lot of the sort of threads that I kept pulling back when I was looking at things that I liked. I went down a rabbit hole with Honor NYC, which is a very, again, bougie wedding dress company, and I really fell in love with this dress, particularly for the floral elements and the tulle overlay. And then I also knew that some techniques that I really wanted to incorporate, things that I find myself coming back to over and over again when it comes to sort of shopping designer or, you know, making my own clothes, is that I really love pin tucks. They're used a lot by horror vacui and a lot of like the more like Liberty print designers. Doen uses a lot of pin tucks. It's like quite like a historical technique to use. And another thing that kept coming up for me was this sort of like square neckline that I think is really just the most flattering probably for my body shape and what I feel really, really good in. This sort of like the idea of having like a hip bustle or a dress with a sort of like very defined V down the middle that's kind of continuous from the top and then separates into two panels on the hips. Is a theme in dresses that I just keep coming back to all the time. It's just something that I just think is so beautiful when it's done right. I think one of the first sewing projects that I ever did was a skirt in that style, and I learned how to do piping, and it was horrendously done because I was making all of my own patterns and I was trying to slash and spread, and it was a bit of a mess, but something I'd like to attempt again. And yeah, it's just something that I just keep coming back to. So it was really important to me that that element was on the dress. I knew that fabrics I kept coming back to were also silk taffeta, tulle. I feel like silk taffeta is kind of used a lot in Vivienne Westwood dresses, for example. So it's like very 80s. And the tulle, yeah, was something that was very important to me to incorporate, to have that sort of like ethereal quality. Basically just combined all of those elements to have one big Megatron dress. So the wedding vibe, so that you get a sense of like whether this feels appropriate or not. We are getting married in a town hall in a civil ceremony in France, in a small town where my dad lives. It's gonna be like a fully French, like administrative affair, completely secular. I think they're like bish bash bosh, 30 minutes, you go in, you sign a few papers, there's a witness, etc., and then they turf you out, and then we will have a champagne reception or a vin d'honneur in that town, and then we will travel to the villa that we rented, where we'll have sort of like a catered dinner, dancing. There's a pool. It's very casual. It's a very small wedding. There'll be no one there that I don't know. You know, it's really quite intimate. The plan is we're gonna make 2 dresses, 1 corset and a petticoat. The corset, I am absolutely just gonna steal all of Carly B's knowledge that she's gained throughout her wedding series, and just yoink, thanks for that, thanks for doing all the work. Just gonna take all of that information and just apply it here, and do no research of my own. I'm even gonna use the same corset pattern that she's been using because I love the look of it, and it just felt like it was the right sort of structure that I was going for. I wanted something corseted that had boning, but at the same time isn't, you know, like super restrictive or super... Anyway, she's just done a really good job, and she's done all of the research for us, and I'm just gonna be just stealing that. I will be using the historical, I think it's called like 1950s Dior, blah, 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 new look maybe. I'll put it up on the screen. The historical pattern that she's using. And I will also be using a cotton bobinette, which I have here. Cotton bobinette, sounds so fancy. It's just cotton tulle. I didn't realize that before, but I purchased this in a very lovely haberdashery shop in London. Actually, my partner went and got it for me. This is 1 meter, and it was horrendously expensive. And I think this will be enough to make the corset. And I also have some spiral steel boning, just like she did. I'm just doing what she did. I don't have enough. I need to order more sizes of these, but they didn't have them in stock at the time. So I have corset making supplies. Before I get into all of the nice materials, I need to make 1,000 toiles to make sure that I'm doing the right size and the right adjustments, etc., etc. But yeah, the plan is to have I think what she calls a corselet underneath that I can then use as a base to build the bodice, which I think will be the most important thing in terms of fit. On top of that, I would like a square-necked, strapped, princess seamed, nipped in at the waist, quite fitted, kind of like, again, like 1950s style with the square neck, dress with these sort of like hip bustles, so it's kind of like fit and flare. There's a bit of fitting after the waist, but then it sort of comes out into a big poofy dress. At T length, because I can't abide the thought of we'll be walking around, my dogs will be about, you know, we'll be in the grass in the villa, and there'll be a pool and stuff. Yeah, there'll be a fair amount of like activity and walking around, so I don't want anything touching the floor, no train, nothing like that. Quite a short length. I'm used to wearing quite long skirts. I do really like a big long skirt, but definitely a couple of inches off the ground, not touching. So yes, with these sort of like hip bustle cutouts that I was talking about before, that is something that comes up a lot for me in designs that I like. I think it's also a flattering shape. I think it's quite vintage, quite 50s, quite blah blah blah, while still being modern. The fabric, a printed silk, floral silk, is the idea. I'll get into that in a minute. I will build the corset first, I believe, and then from there I'd probably like to adapt the bodice pattern of whatever pattern that I'm making to sort of actually just be the same pattern as the corset, just so that it lays on top and is as close fitting as possible. And again, following along on Carly B's videos, I'll probably add boning to both elements. The top layer and the bottom layer, because I think it sounds like that resolved a lot of fit issues for her. Basically, I'm just watching her videos and I'm taking notes, and I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna go do the same thing, but completely different styles of dress. Underneath that, I really want to bring in some of that sort of broderie anglaise, pure white cotton mixed with like red embroidery. So I'd love to have, and also in this Honor NYC dress, there was this sort of like visible white petticoat that was coming out, and I thought that was really a detail that I found really enchanting. So I'd love to have, just peeking out of the dress and with the ability to like lift it up, a cotton, well, a tulle petticoat for volume underneath, and then on top of that a cotton or linen or sort of like a pure white petticoat with many superimposed layers of vintage lace, vintage broderie anglaise, and then some sort of like red embroidered elements. And those are things that I've been thrifting for the last month and a half on when vintage was still doing free shipping from France. I basically took the opportunity to hoover up a lot of very cheap lace, because one of you on Instagram got me onto it, and I can't forgive you because I've spent so much money on just like small bits of fabric, but it's all gorgeous and I'll show you in a minute. Then I'd like to do a tulle overlay dress. So it's completely its own dress, it's not attached, goes over the top, and is essentially just this Simone Rocha tulle dress, because it already incorporates some elements that I really love. It has the pin tucks, it has the volume, it has tulle. I love tulle. I wanted to do that sort of like tulle over floral from the Honor NYC dress, but I didn't want to incorporate it in the dress itself because I felt like it would be really difficult to pattern that and sort of have that volume, where they have it kind of like as a ethereal layer like over the top, that's not actually like touching and like is flush to the fabric. I thought that would be difficult to achieve just in the one dress, and I also like the idea that I can just take it off at one point in the evening. And I also love the idea that this will give me an opportunity to have sleeves. I don't know, I don't often show this area of my body in person to people. Not that there's anything wrong with it, I don't know, I like being covered on my top half. So I think it will be quite strange for me to be completely exposed all day long. For the more like civil elements of it, like the administrative bits in the daytime, it will be nice to have just a bit more coverage and feel a bit more covered up. And then when we're dancing, I can take it off or whatever. So yes, a completely tulle dress, all French seams. Because it's tulle, you'll be able to see all of the seams. But I think that again gives it kind of like a deconstructed kind of punk element that I really quite like. And I think actually having that fabric up there will be lovely, because I have a vintage necklace that my dad gave me that I inherited that I'd like to wear over the top. And I think having something there on the chest will kind of let it blend into the rest of the dress, because I think it has like yellow in it. And I think it won't necessarily match unless I kind of like intentionally match it. That's all of that. I've bought patterns for all three. So I have the corset pattern that I mentioned earlier. I have a pattern for the tulle overlay, which I think will be the simplest to construct in that it's just like a quite trendy poofy dress. That curved element at the waist was something I was looking for in a pattern, as well as the puff sleeves. And I think I found it in this ME, I want to say 2016, but I'm not sure. Really, I just Googled like puff sleeve dress and this came up, and it felt like all the style lines were pretty much perfect. I will just need to sort of move things around and create different panels for that pin tucking. And I also want to add some pin tucks on the sleeves, maybe a little ruffle here. I'd like to do a collar facing with visible stitching and then a hem facing on the bottom. I think I want pockets as well. They'll be visible in tulle, but I think it'll be quite a nice element that you can sort of see. Along the back, I'll do a button panel, which is very similar to the tulle Simone Rocha for H&M dress that I actually already own. She has buttons, big buttons all the way down the back, and I think that's exactly what I'm going for. The other dress, the underdress, I selected the Riviera corset dress pattern on Etsy because it already has integrated that kind of hip bustling and this long panel along the front that goes to the floor. I think it's pretty much spot on the style lines that I want. I just want to modify a bit of the shape of the hip paneling and then probably modify the bust to be a better fit to the corset pattern once I fit that to myself. And the petticoat's last. I don't think it needs to be that structurally fantastic since most of it will be hidden. It's just really going to be like placing all of those vintage elements on top of it and like getting the best look. But I think it'll be like kind of like a hidden detail. And what I really like about this plan is that they're all separate elements. I feel like for at least two of them, I'll definitely get to wear them again. I think the petticoat will be a fun piece by itself. The, tulle overlay is super wearable day to day. Maybe not for some people, but for me, in my style, in my universe, it makes sense. The difficult thing, I think, is going to be fabrics. I hadn't originally intended to sort of thrift a lot of fabrics, but I think it's just sort of ended up happening that way. For the main dress, I mentioned I wanted a silk taffeta or a raw silk because of that sort of textured element and the sheen. And I actually just ended up going on a deep dive on Vinted and finding a bunch of very, very low priced old like 80s wedding dresses that I think I can reclaim a lot of the fabric from. The reason being is that I want the fabric to be printed, and basically the print that I want, inspiration picture here, I think has not been made since the 1800s. So it's I'm obsessed with this idea of like this, like, I think they call it either ICAT or warp printing, or a lot of the digital newer versions of this is it's like a blurred floral. A floral that's not super crisp and clear and has in the old actual like 1800 versions of these, they would have dyed the threads of the silk first and then sort of incorporated them into the what's it called, the weave and the warp, and that's why it has that kind of like blurred look to it. And I have found some warp printed silks in very bougie fabric shops in New York that I've like Googled, but the colors haven't been right. I found some printed florals in the right colors, but they've been just not the right vibe. They've been maybe too girly, too sweet. Just overall, I think I have it in my head, this ideal thing that I don't want to compromise on, and I just can't find it in the fabric shops that I've looked at. I've scoured the internet. If you can find this mystical floral printed fabric in a silk, because I don't want unnatural fibers, then let me know. But I think looking for a print that you have in your head in fabrics is one of the hardest things to do in sewing. And I find that I think it's better when you shop for sewing, when you start with the fabric first and then you do the pattern later, because I think like looking for a really specific thing. I went on a deep dive 3 years ago to find a brown check seersucker like a brown gingham seersucker fabric in cotton, and it was I never found it. It was the hardest thing that I ever tried to do, and it never amounted to anything. So I think with fabrics as well, you need to go in person, you need to look, and they don't always list things on websites, and so it's just really hard. So I think my best option is to paint the silk, because it's that sort of like watercolor blurred kind of abstract floral. I actually think painted silk might lend itself to that. And I've looked at a couple of silk painting videos, and it seems not like the hardest thing in the world, but I've never done it. And it adds a layer of complexity to this project that I'm a little bit scared about. But it has meant that I've been hesitant to just go and buy, you know, like 10 meters of very expensive silk. So I think opting for secondhand will give me a bit more. I mean, it won't allow me to buy more if I mess up, but it will allow me to sort of feel a bit less bad about painting over some very gorgeous expensive silk. So I need to do some practice runs, and I need to figure that out. And then I think this idea came to me the other day. I think like really lightly beading some in the same colors over the florals once it's all done and dusted, like with some like really beautiful like micro glass beads, would be so nice. I think that would be really gorgeous. I also thought if I couldn't achieve the silk painting idea, then I feel like almost like a sort of like cross stitch floral over the top of the silk would give me that kind of same vibe that I'm going for, where it's not just embroidered, that's I think will be too heavy, but it's got that like cross stitch kind of light element over it, and then I can incorporate the bright colors and placement, that kind of thing. It's like a sparse floral. I feel like it's really hard to find. Accessories, we haven't talked about that. I would like to knit a jumper so I can wear in the evening in case I get cold. I'm thinking a clematis, but with I-cord. All I-cord finishing, and then maybe bows, or maybe the frog clasps sewn on I think would be very cute. Something very delicate, maybe doing it all in mohair, so like 2 strands of like a knitting for olive ivory mohair. I'm thinking maybe a veil, maybe like a Molly Goddard style short ruched veil, just for fun, just to wear for a couple of hours. I doubt it'll be for the whole thing. I did see this thing on Instagram the other day where you like sew a little pocket and like sew a little envelope onto a fabric, and I thought maybe I could add that to like the petticoat underneath, which I think would be so cool, and then I can like have my vows in it, or not the vows because there are no vows in a French wedding, but like my speech, I could just, you know, whip it out. I think that's a cute idea. So yeah, that's the plan. Is it too much? And then my other fabric dilemma, which I'd love your help with if you know anything about this. My partner went to, what's it called? McCulloch and Wallace, the very bougie fabric / haberdashery shop in London, and got all of these samples of tulle for me, which was very, very kind. Because basically I'm really conflicted on what fabric to make the tulle dress out of. Because with tulle, there's poly tulle, which I think is the most widely used one. There's different types of poly tulle. There's like power stretch, there's some with bits of silk or viscose in it, there's some that are softer than others, and then there's also silk tulle, which is I think £54 a meter, and you think about how many meters a dress will be, probably a lot of it double layered. And also what everyone said to me about silk tulle is that it rips really easily, and I think even just by pulling on it I can kind of see that, like, yeah, it's very, very fragile. So I don't actually think a full dress, like a dress in its own right, should be made out of the silk tulle. All of the other tulles, what have we got here? Poly, so these are all polys. This one's good. This one kind of feels like the silk tulle, but it's more, I'd have to look up what this one is on the website. 4084. The poly tulles I think will be more robust, and they're like £8 a meter, so I can buy loads of them, not worry about it. So, but basically I don't know what type of tulle to go for. Oh, this one's nylon. I think that's too stiff. want something light, but I also don't want something that's just going to completely disintegrate. So yeah, I'm not planning on thrifting that. I will just buy some tulle outright, because I found it's quite hard to look for that kind of thing. Yeah, this one has really good stretch. This is my box of vintage goodies, all laces. I'm not going to use all of these, but I just got I was doing bundle deals. A lot of them were very cheap, and I was just looking for things that I could sort of like play around with and probably like pin on a mannequin and then kind of see what I'm feeling. But I'll show you because it's cute. Filet crochet. Filet crochet. This one's gorgeous. I really, really do think I will use this one. Look at that. A lot of these are like handmade, and they're very old, and they definitely need a clean. We have some trim. This is adorable too, this broderie. Some of that red embroidered. I probably won't use this. This feels very synthetic. These are probably also a bit too thick, but anything that I don't use in the dress, I'd love to use as part of the table decorations. Or I just cut out the middleman and I don't learn how to filet crochet, and then I just make things out of this. I have loads of this. This is dentelle de pluie, so I think it's handmade antique lace. And I've 11 meters of this. This is funny. This is actually a warp printed silk ribbon, which I kind of just bought as like inspiration. And I thought that I could probably like incorporate this somewhere in the inside of the dress as like a little like hidden detail. I have some more lace, filet crochet. This is some of the stuff that I feel like I need to get more of. This like broderie, you know, cotton, holy kind of deal. I love this with the little letters. So cute. I even thought as well, if I wanted to sort of like add my own little embroidery and add a little message or something, then it would sort of be in keeping. I think these are probably the main red embroidered elements that I'll add in these like circular shapes. I think are really stunning. These ones have like little pictorial. So cute. So yeah, that's my bits stash. I think I do have enough there of each of the different elements. And then it'll just be a question of sort of playing around with what works together. I think it'll be a lot of like clashing whites, which I don't mind too much. So I bought a vintage wedding dress for €100. It wasn't a lot of money, and it's not my size. My idea is that I'd like to deconstruct it, harvest all of the silk, somehow wash the silk. I don't think you're supposed to wash silk, but I think I will need to wash it if I'm painting it. So I need to figure out how I want to do that. What I liked about buying it outright is that it will have all of these like embedded elements. So it has the covered buttons with the very traditional. I'll show you in a minute. It has like button elements. It has elements inside that I can kind of reuse. It also has like a tulle net kind of petticoat kind of deal that again I could like reuse, reintegrate. And I think because it's already all matching, I think it'll be nice to already have those elements on hand. I don't know if I have enough fabric. It's too small for me. I think it's a size 10, but it has this long train and it's also very ruched. So I think once I deconstruct it, if there aren't any major cuts in the fabric, then it should be more than enough for this much shorter dress that I'm going for. That's if I can paint it. I also have 7 meters of, I think also raw silk coming from Vinted, which didn't cost a lot of money. And that I can either use in combination or instead of this. I have a lot to play around with, and worst comes to worst, I can always just go out and buy some raw silk, like off the bolt. That's the plan. That's the plan. It's really ambitious. Please tell me that I'm crazy. I'm currently in the patterning stage, and I'm just about to sew up a lot of like my first toiles and make changes from there. Once I have a toile for each of them in calico fabric, I will then go ahead and do a toile in a fabric that's similar to the actual target fabric without cutting into the main fabric. And then once we really feel like we're ready, we can go and do the real thing. If you have any advice about anything that I talked about, please help me, because big disclaimer on this whole series, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, from Carly B keeps saying that she doesn't know what she's doing, but I really don't know what I'm doing. And I'm just doing what other people say is good. Wish me luck. I'm just not gonna doubt my own confidence on this. I'm just gonna get straight into it and just do the work and see what happens. And worst comes to worst, I'll just buy us a Cecilie Bahnsen dress and a month before, and we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Yeah, that's the plan. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next installment, I guess. Bye. It's so Irish of me to just talk about the weather every time that I get on camera, but it's like the first day of sun that we've had in like 10 days. I think I just realized that I have like really no practice in like being a girl. To give you an example, I turned up at a spa for the first time and didn't bring flip-flops or a swimming costume because I didn't know that you needed to have those. Yeah, I'm not really good at those things. I need to like figure out how to like go get your nails done for the wedding, because I've never done that before either. Getting naked in a changing room where there's like 4 mirrors around you and they like take your bra for you and you're just kind of I was wearing like big black granny panties. Like it was yeah, I think I could have, it was kind of and then I left my bra at the shop because I forgot it when I was putting my clothes back on. Yeah, I'm not good at these things. If you thought your wedding dress trying on experience was awkward, I got you beat. Mine was way more awkward. Plus it was all in Spanish. So I'm just standing there like, ah la 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 la.